Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome to the HGI podcast. My name is Diego Sanchez, and I'll be your host for today's segment. We want to take a moment and welcome all of our community members from all walks of life. We welcome you, your families, ancestors, and all your relations to the conversation today. Today's segment is going to be focused on youth voice, and we'll get an opportunity to hear from our NCN staff that is connected in healing and in their circles of life. You might have heard of them, but would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course. I will say that it's interesting to be on this side of the interview because I'm normally the one asking the questions, but my name's Ariel Jimenez. I have served as the co-host for most of the year, but I know we wanted to hear an opportunity to switch roles a little bit and hear a little bit about my story. So Diego, thank you for welcoming me, and I'm excited for our conversation today.
I'm excited too. It's been a minute since I've been on the podcast. But let's just dive straight into it. How did you first get connected with NCN and their work?
The way that I got connected came in different ways. I was actually a lot younger. I had just turned 18 and got connected at Mario Zuna Sanchez, which a lot of people who are connected to NCN know. I, was coming straight into college, and I didn't really know much about La Cultura Cura, didn't really know much about Circle, but he really welcomed me in a good way where it felt familiar. And I think one of the first times that I sat in that circle as a participant was really one of the first times that I really felt comfortable in my own skin. Up until then, I was disconnected to my cultura, really disconnected within my family and within community. And I was just trying to kind of just go through life, trying to figure it out.
Right. And so you talk about feeling connected. How did sitting in those circles help you feel more connected to maybe your family, your culture, what have you?
Yeah, I think sitting in those circles really allowed me to explore who I was. Simply just my name. Before then, I was very ashamed of my long name, right? So my name is Ariel Juan Carlos Jimenez Bustos Perez Vallejo de la Cruz. And for the longest time, I was because, it sounds very Mexican. It sounds very, from what other people would say, very paisa. And I never knew until I got connected to Mario and I got connected to Maestro Hector that I really got to know that those last names really represented that I came from 4 grandparents and not just 2. So it was really the first time that it allowed me to kind of explore, who am I? Who do I come from? Who do I represent? And what were all the people that came before me, all of my ancestors and all of them? What did they do to allow me to show up today? So that's why I said that it felt different, but it felt familiar, and I was confused, but connected.
Right. And kind of playing off of that, especially in this space when we talk about círculo and sitting in it, one of the first words that comes to my mind, at least, is healing or feeling sacred. And this is kind of a two-parter. You can answer it as you will, but how would you define healing, right? That's a question I've asked before on this podcast, but how would you define it?
Healing, I would say, is dealing with the wounds of the past. Sometimes, we've been through such traumatic experiences that we don't even know we carry some of those wounds. We've suppressed it. We haven't been allowed to talk about it. Sometimes we don't even get an opportunity to acknowledge it. And sometimes we carry baggage that ain't even ours to carry, right? I'm carrying the baggage of my parents' experiences that shaped them to raise me the way they thought was better. Also carrying the baggages of my grandparents that they never got an opportunity to talk about what they went through, that it wasn't okay that they went through that, and what were the repercussions that they didn't have to deal with. So I think a lot of that, understanding it is one thing, but really facing it and starting the healing process, it's a lot different. So how is it that I got connected to medicine? How is it that I got connected to Círculo? And I think, when I was in Circle and someone said, what is shareable is bearable, it really allowed me and gave me the opening to start sharing some of those experiences that brought a lot of shame. Some of those experiences that when I said out loud, I didn't know how they were going to be received. So when I think about healing, I think about facing those wounds that we carry, and sometimes those wounds that we don't even know we have.
Right. And this comes as the second part of that question is, when did you realize you were sacred? Because healing and sacredness are very important in the Círculo. And so that second part is, when did you realize that you were sacred?
I think that's a tricky one to answer, because I think when I realized it in my mind versus when I realized it in my heart are two different instances, and they're years apart, right? When I realized I was sacred in my mind was when I was in Círculo, when I was listening to Maestro Jerry, when I was listening to Mario deliver teachings. I then realized that I never lost my value. I was sacred when I was born. I was sacred when I took my first breath. I was sacred when they held me for the first time. And I was equally sacred when I got arrested. I was equally sacred when I got suspended. I was equally sacred when I went through some of those shameful experiences, because I never lost my sacredness. So in my mind, I realized it a lot later. In my heart, I realized it when my grandma would give me the bendición before I would leave. You know, when I had to go to my soccer practice, and she said, before you leave, let me give you this blessing and a kiss on the cheek. Y te quiero mucho, te amo, te cuidas. That same blessing then was later on given to me by my mom, and then later on given to me by my little brother. So I think, you know, I realized I was sacred in my heart when I was receiving those blessings as I was walking out of the door. But I received the teaching of feeling and being sacred a lot later when I sat in circle and was able to absorb and understand the teachings.
Wow. You're talking about receiving the bendición. That hits close to home, because I just this weekend, I don't know when they're going to be listening to this, but just this weekend was my grandma's birthday, so I got to go up and say hi, and that was nice. And I want to talk to you about what has helped you most as you've gone on this healing journey. What has stuck out to you? What maybe teaching has really resonated with you?
I think there's a lot of teachings that really resonated with me. I think the biggest teaching has been the true definition of a macho. I think right now there's a false sense of what it means to be macho, you know, really rooted in patriarchy and unhealthiness, unhealthy values, and really just a false sense of what it means to be a macho. And I think the first time that I saw the true definition of a macho, and it being associated with being vulnerable, being caring, being nurturing, words that before then I didn't associate with macho, was really eye-opening for me. Knowing that the word comes from the root word of machist, that is a Nahua and a native term that meant to be a man. And that if you were going to be a man, that it came with the level of responsibility and the level of connection to values that allow us to be healthy in all our relationships, as a son, as a brother, as a partner, in every relationship, right? Not just in one. And when I was able to have then those conversations and bring them home and be able to talk to my dad about that, and then my dad giving me different teaching of, mijo, you know, this is also what I learned about being a man, about being responsible, about taking care of yourself. It was a way that I had never spoken to my dad before. My relationship with my dad was very rough, because I never understood why he treated my mom the way that he did. And when we were able to have a candid conversation about what does it mean to be a true man, and I saw the level of teachings that he was able to offer, it allowed us to start mending our relationship. And then that has then trickled down to my little brother, who is now 11 years old, going to be a teenager, and he's received some of those teachings that I am now getting in my 20s, you know, and 30s and things like that. So for me, the true definition of a macho and what is the difference between being a male and a man was one of the teachings that I always needed but didn't know I was missing.
Yeah, I remember learning from my dad really young. I got the story of crossing the bridge, right, where it was about how the elders had to help the young men and the young women, I think. But I heard the young men story. So yeah. In my experience, it was they helped the young men cross the bridge properly, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've heard so many of those stories, right? The 4 values, the crossing the bridge. And I would just love to know, do you have a favorite one of those stories that either you like to hear or you like to tell?
Yeah, I think the one that I like to hear is about the balanced community. because I think they all have a different teaching, right? But the balanced community, when it really talks about this teenager who decided to cut class, who decided to just hang around and not really fulfill his commitments, and in the process of going into the store where he was going to steal something, he then got connected to an elder who taught him what does it mean to have a balanced community. And really the teaching was that if you want a balanced community, you got to work hard for it. There's got to be sacrifice. That if you want a balanced community, there's got to be a level of faith, because you could work very hard for your balanced community, but you might not see the benefit of it, right? Your kids might not see the benefit of it, but hopefully your kids' and future generations will be able to prosper from your hard work now. And it really talks about the 7 generations passing it down, because sometimes, we're so much about the immediate gratification that we want to see change right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not really ready to put into work if we know we're not going to benefit from it just yet. So I think that was one of the, like, damn, I got to do A, B, and C. And even after I do all of that, I got to have faith in the process, because I might not get a benefit from it. Like, what? So I think that's the one that kind of jumps out to me the most, because then, at the end of Mario telling that story, he then looks at us and it says, would you take the seats? Would you do the work? Knowing all of this. So then, it gets you thinking, and it says, will I? And then he then lets us know, you already took the seats by being here, by receiving these teachings and taking these teachings home. You already started that process and you don't even know it yet. So that's the teaching that kind of resonates with me the most. And I haven't had an opportunity to tell it yet in circle. So I want to tell it hopefully soon. We'll see. Because this is a story that I heard years ago, right?
Yeah. I wanted to touch on something you said. You talked about the importance of making decisions not only for ourselves and for the immediate gratification, but for the future. And it's important that we see that, especially with stuff going on now, like climate change, right? Stuff that we do now, we might not see the effects of for several generations, if there are that many. And so I wanted to know, what is maybe an issue that you can bring up, that you would like to bring to light, that we need to work on, right? That's something that we need to properly do right now so that the future generations can see the benefit of.
Damn, just one?
Yeah, you only get one. Maybe two. Maybe two.
Right? Maybe two if I'm lucky. I think one of the biggest ones is mental health. And specifically mental health with young men and men in general. Because I think it's always been taboo for us to show emotions. I think people have always taught us to man up. I think that a lot of people haven't given us the opportunity to really say, this is what I'm going through and this is how it's affecting me. And I think that has led us to really struggle with a lot of it in silence. And I say that specifically, I have a cousin right now that lost his mom, that lost my tia. And he is struggling with his mental health to the point where he even has suicidal ideation. And I admire him so much because he came to our family and said, hey, I had these thoughts. I didn't act on them, but I'm not okay. And I think it's important for us to realize that it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to suffer in silence. I think, as men, the biggest thing that we can do is talk about our issues, talk about our emotions, and talk about it in a way that is not shameful. That being a man means manning up in this way, to not suppress it, to not avoid it. So I think that's important for us to talk about. Also, one of the biggest ones is really changing the culture in continuation schools and really dealing with the environment that is being created in youth prisons. I don't think youth belong in cages. I do think that, people need to be responsible for their actions. And I think there's other ways to do that. And I don't think incarceration is the only answer. I think in California, if you were to follow the dollar signs, that is being turned into a business model where people benefit from people being locked up. And there has been more prisons, whether you look at youth prisons or adult prisons, there's been more prisons built than colleges. So if you follow the money, where they're hoping to supposedly educate our youth. And I think there's more benefit to educate our youth in community versus being arrested. So that's one of the biggest things, because my family has been impacted from my dad being arrested, from me being arrested when I was a youth, to my brother being in prison. And I could tell you that the lessons that you learn in there are not the healthiest. And we need our people to be in community. We need our people to be healthy, and we need our people to be free. We've been in chains. We've been in cement walls. We've been locked up way too long. And I think we need to find better ways to support our people that are struggling.
And when we talk about the people who are struggling, or even just the people in general, do you have any advice for those that are struggling right now, or struggling with this, or really anything? Those future generations, right? We keep talking about those future generations. What is your advice for them?
I was actually, I was in New Mexico sitting with a lot of wisdom keepers, a lot of wisdom carriers there. And one of the wisdom keepers stood up and said, our people need different medicines. They need different dosages at different times for different things, for different communities, for different people's walk of life. And when she said that, it really resonated, because not everybody needs the same thing. What's healing for one person might be triggering for another. So, the advice that I have is find out what works for you. Find out who works for you. Because I could also tell you that in my relationships, I've been toxic to some people, and I've been healing for others. And not everybody's gotten the same Ariel. And for one of my relationships, it was very triggering for me. But I was able to identify my triggers. I was able to deal with those triggers. And now that allows me to be a better person for my current relationship. So when I heard that different people need different dosages at different times in different ways, that really resonated with me, because healing doesn't just come within one avenue. There's different ways to heal.
Yeah. I've been told so many times it's a journey that never ends.
With no destination.
Nope. You just keep doing it.
I just want to get there.
But I then want to ask you, right? You've sat in circle, I'm sure, with many wise elders, right? The ones who like to go on rambling for a long time. And I am calling you out, but they'll still do it. And I do love it. I love hearing their stories. But I want you to maybe highlight one or two people that have helped you the most on your healing journey.
Oh, that's a tough one. The person that comes to mind automatically has been Mario Suna Sanchez. And the reason why I say him is because he's never pushed healing on me. He's never said, hey, you need to heal. Hey, you need to deal with your traumas. He's always just called me his little brother and has given me opportunities to heal, right? He invited me into the Sweat Lodge. He invited me into Circle. He invited me into Joven Noble. And every door that he has opened, I've had the confidence to walk through because I have trust in him. He's never let me down, right? So when I think of one person, he's one that I really gravitate to. Even, nowadays, when we're co-facilitating or when we're in the curriculum training, he still continues to be one of my maestros. And I know he doesn't like that name, right? Because he's more of a big brother to me, but he's gotten me connected to many different healing ways and continues to do so. So I definitely say him. The other person, is my grandpa, Cirilo Bustos, who I always say, he had 15 children, and those 15 children were all daughters. So he had 15 daughters and 0 sons. So, when I think about him, me and my brother were the first grandchildren that were men. So when he got to hold us for the first time, and he had a very big role in raising us. He taught me how to respect women. He taught me how to carry myself with honor and respect. And one of the biggest things that he taught me, he said, lo que vale más no tiene precio. And what he was telling me is that the things that are most important, that really hold value in life, don't have a price. Having your palabra doesn't have a price. You can't buy palabra, right? Carrying yourself with honor, dignity, and respect, you can't buy that. So he was one of the first people that really took me under his wing and taught me how to carry myself with honor and respect. So I would say those two people.
So you talk about carrying yourself with honor, respect, having your palabra, having your dignity. I think it can be a struggle, and it is a challenge sometimes to always walk and have your palabra and carry yourself with respect. And I just want to ask you, what is maybe something you do when you feel that you're struggling and you can't be carrying yourself and you're trying to be that best self, but maybe it's a struggle to keep your palabra today. It's a struggle to be respectful to those people you need to be respectful today.
That's a good question. I think what helps me the most is to surround myself with good people.
Yeah.
Because when you surround yourself with good people that live what they talk about, it's not necessarily that they're going to check you or that they're going to tell you that you're messing up or anything like that. They're just going to love on you. And they're also going to remind you how sacred you are. And I'm talking about my girlfriend. I'm talking about hanging out with my sister, my little brother, my mentors like Mario and Ozzy, and my maestros like Hector, Papa Bear, Jerry. When you get more connected, you're able to mess up and they're going to chin check you with love. The first time that I heard Mario say that I'm going to chin check you with love, I didn't know what that meant. I knew what a chin check was and I knew what love was. I never knew those things could, be connected. So that's what I like to do. If I'm struggling personally, like I'm carrying a lot of baggage of my family, I'm carrying a lot of baggage in my workspace, I'm carrying a lot of baggage in my community, I tend to get closest to the people that know me and that love me, because they're going to know something is wrong, but they're not going to try to fix it for me. Because that's my pet peeve. Don't fix my problems. Just join me in the journey as I fix them, right? So I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are going to love you.
That are going to chin check you with love.
Chin check you with love. Yeah, I was so confused when I heard that the first time.
So you talk about being chin check with love. Who in your family would you go to if you needed a chin check with love? Or even just who have you learned most from in your family? Is it grandpa, sister, who?
I would say my older brother. So I have an older brother,
Right.
3 years older than me, Omar Jonathan Jimenez, who has always chin checked me with love, and sometimes just chin check me in general, right? I got that older brother, and he gave me a lot of different teachings growing up. But one of the things that he taught me was to make sure that I was respectful in the classroom. And he said, I don't care what you're doing on the streets. I don't care if you get jumped in. I don't care if you're doing here, doing that. But you always want to make sure that you're respecting your elders. And that has taken me in a lot of different places, because people have come up to me and said, you know what? I respect that you respect me. I never knew that was going to carry me in so many different ways, and I lift him up because I'll be honest that he was the older brother that ended up in prison while I ended up in college. And we grew up in the same house. We have the same parents. We have the same journey for the most part. People always wondered, like, why did he go to prison and why did you go to college? And the only difference is that he didn't have an older brother like I did, because he watched out for me. He made sure that I did my work. He made sure I got straight A's. He made sure I went to football and soccer practice. He made sure that I had food in my belly when my parents were too busy working 2 or 3 jobs. He was one that really took care of me, loved on me, but also was able to call me out when I wasn't acting right. And having that role model to really, walk with me, to correct me when I was doing wrong, but at the end of the day, to love me 100% unconditionally, it was a relationship that I still haven't found in anybody else. So I always lift him up, because he also carried a lot of the baggage so that I didn't have to carry it, right? He was that older brother that had to translate for my parents when he was 5. He was that older brother that had to teach me English because he got bullied because we had just came from Mexico. He was that older brother that would defend me when we were, getting beat as kids, because we grew up in a very domestic violence house. So he would literally put his own body in front of the whippings in order to protect me. So for me, if I were to think about one person that chin checked me, but that always loved on me and always made me feel special and sacred, it would be my older brother, Omar.
Wow. And kind of following in a similar vein, talking to a younger you, what would you maybe say to them if you were 15, maybe 10, those formative years? What would you say to yourself then?
Damn, as a teenager, I think I was struggling with a lot of identity issues, right? When you hear about La India Maria, that would say ni de aquí ni de allá, right? I was too Mexican to be American in Western ideology, but I was too American to be Mexican to my family back in Mexico, right? So I was like in that little cusp of it. So I would say, to a little 15-year-old little Ariel to love all parts of you, to even love the parts that you wish you could change about yourself, and even the parts that you wish were different, to love your brown skin, to love the chubbiness, because the reality is all the family that fed you, that was their love language. And that's why you have that round body, right?
Yeah.
Because that's another thing about our culture, right? We love to eat.
Yeah.
But what I would also tell him is that you're worthy. You're worthy of love. You're worthy of these teachings. You're worthy of ceremony. You're worthy of knowing your native tongue. You're worthy of knowing Spanish. You're worthy of everything that you desire, you deserve. So if I were to talk to the 15-year-old confused, angry little kid, I would say, everything's going to be all right. And you're worthy of everything that you desire.
Yeah. And speaking about the culture, I have a different relationship. I don't speak Spanish. I was born in the United States. I have also struggled with my own identity, trying to figure out, right? Because I feel more American. And when I'm, especially places like college, they see me and they see someone who is Mexican. But if I go to see family in LA, and if I ever go see my family in Mexico, I'll be seen as American. And so towing that line between not feeling American, not feeling Mexican is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And it's a part of the culture that I've grown to really disdain. I have a lot of disdain for it because I've been told, right, you're not Mexican because of these reasons, or, oh, you're definitely not American because you don't look American. And for me, that's the part that I don't like. But there are so many pieces that I do like, right? We love to eat. We love to eat. We have delicious food. And so I want to know, what is your favorite part of Mexican culture, Latino culture?
All of it, right? I think, well, first, even just to kind of address what you talked about, when people question your identity, like I want to belong to places where my identity is not questioned, where I can just show up as me and show up in parts of me that I want to share with other people, because I've been accused of doing that, right? When I speak proper and I use what they call SAT words, all of a sudden I'm not Mexican, right? It's like, what, are Mexicans not allowed to be educated? Or even when I've been in spaces with Mario and Maestro Jerry, and in the past I would say, oh, well, I'm half Mexican and I'm half indigenous and I'm part Salvadorian and all of this, Maestro Jerry would be like, well, what part of you is native? You're Nalgas? Like, what part of you is native? Right? And he would want to say, if you're going to, give yourself a percentage, I want to know what part of you is native, what part of you is Mexican, what part of you is Salvadorian. And I never knew how to answer that. And it wasn't until in conversations with them to say, you're 100% everything. You're 100% native. You're 100% Salvadorian. You're 100% Mexican. And being okay with that. And not having to define that for anybody else. So I think that's important. First of all, you decide your identity, and your relationship with your identity, it's only yours and nobody else's. So that's important. But if I were to specifically think about my culture and how I was raised, I would say the music, because the music connects everybody. I once heard one person say, what kept my heart beating was the beat of the music. If it wasn't for music, if it wasn't for the words in hip hop, if it wasn't for the rhythm and salsa, if it wasn't for the drum and ceremony, I wouldn't be here. So I think when I think of music, you might not even know the words, but if the rhythm vibrates through your body, you feel alive, you feel connected. And that's ultimately true. You feel alive. You feel the beat. You feel the words. It resonates with you. So what I love most about my culture is the music from Bad Bunny, the music from hip hop, the rancheras, the corridos, all of it, because that's how people connect. So I would say definitely the music and being able to dance with it. I mean, you get a little kid that is dancing in his diapers to a grandma that decides, you know what? My hip's not hurting when this music is on, right? And everywhere in between. So I would say definitely the music.
I'll say it again. It's a universal language, music. And I also want to ask you, what helps you heal? And this is kind of a little pivot, but what helps you heal? Is it art? Is it music? Does music help you heal? Is it poetry? What has helped you on your healing journey?
I wish I could say music, but I'm too clumsy. Right. I've appreciated when people pick up the guitar and they're able to just, drum it out. Right. I appreciate when people are able to create music, even the songs that people sing in ceremony. I'm not a singer. I'm not a musician. I don't connect in that way, but I love to write. And I don't love to write my thoughts. I don't love to write my words. I love to hear people speak, and I capture quotes from what they said. Hey, you said this. And sometimes when I repeat it to other people and actually repeat their words back to them, they don't even remember saying it sometimes. I remember being in a training with Maestro Jaime Molina, and he said, I have an important question. How do I find a sense of order if I was raised in chaos? And that to me just gravitated to me. I'm like, I was raised in chaos. I was raised in that household where your parents got into a physical fight the night before. And in the morning you had to eat your breakfast like if you heard none of it, like if none of it had happened. So I was taught to suppress my emotions. I was taught to not talk about issues that were in my face. I was taught to just act like everything was normal. And it was like, how do you find a sense of order when you're raised in chaos? And I wrote that down. I then did a drawing for it. I then added some colors to it. And then when I repeated it back to him, he's like, when did I say that? And I was like, your words meant so much to me that I captured them, right? So I actually have a little journal where, once a week I tried to write down a quote that someone shared with me. And then I try to add some color and some life into it. The other quote that really stands out to me is Baba Greg Hodge, who said, butterflies are important to us. That we don't get to see a butterfly's transformation. We simply just get to witness the beauty that emerges. And then he went to teach us that in order for the butterfly to go through its transformation, it needs to find a safe place for it to be vulnerable. Because in that cocoon, it cannot defend itself. So when he started talking about that, I started drawing the butterfly and adding color to it and capturing some of the words. So for me, what's healing is hearing other people's words and putting it down on paper, whether it's a reflection, a poem, a writing, or simply a quote with some images on it. So that's what helps me at least process and heal.
And that has brought us to the end of our questions, but I want to say thank you. I want to give you the floor if you would like to drop any elderly wisdom on our audience. If there's anything else you'd like to say.
Well, I will start by saying that I am far from elderly. I one day wish that somebody in some community will see me as an elder, and really not because of my own journey, but because of the people that have poured love into me. So I do want to say that. But as a closing remarks, I would just say, thank you for allowing me the space to sit in the seat. I know normally I'm a co-host. Normally I'm the one asking the questions and offering reflections, but you've given me an opportunity to just kind of tell a little bit about my story. And I appreciate that because my story is not unique. There's a lot of people that share my struggles. There's a lot of people that share the same blessings. There's a lot of people that have poured into me, whether it's been good or bad. And there's a lot of people that I represent. So it's always a good reminder that when I walk out the door, I represent my little brother, Christopher. I represent my grandma, Maria Cruz in Guadalupe. I represent my grandparents. And even though they might not be here physically, they will always be here, ancestrally. So I think for us, just having these conversations are important because we're able to share all the beautiful teachings that have been shared with us. And we get reminded that we're not wisdom keepers, that we're wisdom carriers. And I think that's important too, for us to carry the stories, carry the teachings, carry the values, hold them for what we need, and then share them out so that other people can get what they need out of it too. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm excited to continue this journey with you, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure doing this interview. I just want to say, once again, thank you to all of our listeners. I don't know how many of you there are, but you mean so much to me, because if not, I'm just talking into a void. I want you all to just be mindful of yourself, your own mental health. These kind of conversations can be very stressful, sometimes triggering. Just make sure to take time for yourself. Make sure that you're doing okay. Check in with those that you love, those that you care about. And I just want to say thank you all for listening, and I hope to be here next time.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.